And Amanda,
Yeah.
again, welcome everyone to the 4th Annual Climate Summit at Washtenaw Community College. My name is Emily Thompson, and Smita Malpani and I are co-chairs of this event, and we're so excited that you're here. The slides I'm displaying now are thank yous to those who have contributed to our presentations today, including our speakers, our special guests, our funding sponsors, our instructional support, and our facilitators. I'm dropping the agenda into the chat with help from one of our facilitators, and we have an ambitious program today that will require us to keep on time. For speakers, I'll be using timing backgrounds on behind me, and as you approach your timing limit, we'll be going through colors. Each of you has a different timing amount. Green meaning you're getting close, yellow meaning you're getting really close, and red meaning you are at your time. And would you please wrap up? And I'm just letting you know in case you see these changing behind me. After all our speakers have spoken, we'd love to take your questions. At that time, Smita Malpani, who will be emceeing that portion of the meeting, will look for your questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can in the allotted time. Our theme today is climate change and our climate change and food. I'm excited to have a chance myself to learn along with you how climate change, food production and consumption, and environmental justice intersect. Do all people, regardless of race, gender, or income, have equal access to healthy food, the opportunities to grow it, and protections from environmental harms that arise during food production and transportation? In other words, does everyone get a slice of the pie? Speaking of pie, we'd like a little bit of interaction with you today. And at this time, you can write in the chat your favorite kind of dessert, including pie, and you can read each other's responses there. When our speakers start, again, we're going to ask you not to write in the chat. We're going to start today with our land acknowledgement, and let me click out of here. We're going to start with our land acknowledgement written last year by a special committee, including Dale Petty and Gabriela Gaitan Aguera. Gabriela will read the acknowledgement, and let me give a speaker introduction for Gabriela. Gabriela Gaitan Aguera is a WCC student majoring in sociology. Gabriela is the current president of the Students for Sustainability Club, and she's organized many club events. She's transferring to U of M in the fall to take pre-law classes in order to become an immigration lawyer. I hand it over to Gabriela.
Thank you, Emily, for the introduction. So I'm going to be presenting the land acknowledgement, the WCC land acknowledgement. So as members of the Washtenaw Community College community, we humbly acknowledge that the campus occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of diverse Native peoples. The taking of this land was formalized in a process alien to Native cultures by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807 with the Anishinaabe, including the Ottawa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and with the Wyandot. Many other Native people lived on this land at different times, including the Fox, the Sauk, the Shawnee, the Kickapoo, the Miami, Muscatoon, and the Cherokee. Since the origin of the college in 1965, we have benefited from the use of this land where we work and study and from its life, beauty, and spirit. We recognize our responsibility to understand and care for this land, and we honor with our deepest gratitude the Native people who have stewarded it for generations. Acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture, but let this step be an opening to greater public consciousness of Native history, sovereignty, and cultural rights, and a step toward equitable relationships and reconciliation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. That was absolutely beautiful. We are now going to go to our official kickoff given to us by Dr. Eric Reed. Dr. Eric Reed is Dean of Student Access, Success, Equity, and Inclusion here at Washtenaw Community College. With a higher education background focused on access and equity, He believes WCC is in a prime position to enhance the economic situation of each student and the broader community. Dr. Reed primarily oversees the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, which is responsible for leading student-centered initiatives that enhance a sense of belonging and success, including things like the MLA Celebration, First Gen Day, HBCU Pathway, Student Success Conference, and so on. I give you Dr. Eric Reed.
Thank you, Emily. It is such a pleasure to be here today with you all, and good afternoon. It is my honor to introduce this year's theme of the Climate Summit, which is food. When we talk about environmental justice, sustainability, or climate change, it is nearly inevitable that we focus on the disparities that exist between race, zip codes, and income levels as it relates to food. In today's world, we're making very far advances in technology, including electric vehicles and many other things that are really going to help and benefit our environment. But while we make this much needed progress, it is important for us to keep at the forefront of our minds the inequities that exist with one of our most vital and basic needs, food. Genocide, stolen lands, broken treaties, slavery, redlining, and many other discriminatory laws and forms of racism have led to one of the most major underlying causes of food inequity, which is land ownership. Today, communities of color collectively only own 2% of all the land in the US. Additionally, we know that much of our food inequities can be attributed to access. The lack of access to grocery stores with quality produce and the overabundance of highly processed foods have led to higher rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and many other diseases amongst communities of color. A case study in Detroit by Renee Walker found that households in poor Black communities were on average 1.1 miles farther from a supermarket than the poorest white neighborhoods. As we reflect on that and we engage and listen to our speakers today, it is important that we reflect and digest in ways that we can advance food sovereignty and environmental justice for African-American communities, Hispanic communities, Indigenous communities, and many other economically disadvantaged communities. As a note, I encourage you all to engage and support local community organizations that are committed to advancing food sovereignty, like We the People Opportunity Farm in Ypsilanti, which was a MLK Equity and Action Award winner this year. So I close with, I hope that everyone enjoys today's Climate Summit, and I want to say thank you to the Sustainability Task Force for leading this year's Climate Summit and putting it all together. Thank you. Please enjoy the day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reed, for firing us up for our talks that are to come. We really appreciate that you gave us a very fine kickoff to our Climate Summit. Our next speaker is Alana Kreis. It's my pleasure to introduce Alana. Alana lived in a rural agricultural valley in Washington State. She has over 25 years of food systems experience, education, and research. Her interdisciplinary credentials include sociology, environmental studies, philosophy, ecological economics, and public policy to augment her Master of Science in Food Systems from the University of Vermont. She is also currently a PhD candidate in the School of Environment and Natural Resources at Ohio State University, working on factors impacting new and beginning small farmers. The title of her talk is Direct and Indirect Impacts of Climate Change on Food Production. I give you Alana Kreis.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction. We're on a tight time schedule, so I'm not going to keep on the introduction other than where I come from are some humble roots in Washington State. I come from an agricultural valley. My father attempted 2 restaurants, and one of them both heavily indebted to meat production. And I introduced that to let you know I'm coming from a place because I'm going to hammer at our agricultural production for animal products today, but also touch upon some other things. So I'm going to share my screen now, and everyone should be looking at the PowerPoint slides that I have prepared today. And I'm going to go to full screen now, so please let me know if that's not happening. But direct and indirect impacts of climate change on food production, or my subtitle is The Western World's Unhealthy Obsession with the Cow, Pigs and Chickens Too. But before we do that, let's do we're going to do a crash course overview of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, came out with its 6th iteration and its 3rd summary just last month. It's been formed for over 33 years. It's the unequivocal body of science and summaries that have confirmed unequivocally that climate change is not only happening, but it is happening now. 195 member countries, over 14,000 scientific peer-reviewed journal articles and other governmental reports. And in 2021, IPCC issued its 6th report, and it says human influence on the climate system is clear, and recent anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases are the highest in history. Recent climate changes have had a widespread impacts on human and natural systems. So the highlights from these 3 summaries are in these 3 bullet points here. I'm just going to really focus on the bold parts. Right now, we're on a current trajectory to increase average global temperatures by 2.7 to 3.1 degrees Celsius. Now, while that might not seem like a lot, climate change is going to be mostly irreversible for at least some time if we reach 1.5 degrees, and it will be catastrophic for both human and natural systems at 2 degrees Celsius. So if we are on a current trajectory for 2.7 to 3.1, that is very concerning. It is critical that communities invest in adaptation of climate change. And adaptation is a big part of food systems, and we're currently woefully under prepared for that. And then finally, confronting the climate crisis requires not only a complete transformation of our energy sources and our economic models, it also requires land stewardship, and land stewardship is where agriculture comes into play. So this just gives us a quick graph. I'm not going to go over it because of time. I want to get to the food systems, but it just shows you since our accurate measure of temperatures since 1880, we can see a clear trend of temperature increases in since the Industrial Revolution. And then for the hottest years on record, we know that it's ramping up, and I'll just read the very last line on this slide, and that is the 9 years spanning 2013 through 2021 rank among the 10 warmest years on record. Climate change is not future, we are in it now. So let's go ahead and do that. And emissions. So our current emission standards, so greenhouse gas emissions are the primary driver of heat energy in the atmosphere. And our current trajectory right now, the long-term trajectory is 3.1 to 3.7 with, but unless the current pledges that the Paris Climate Accord come into play, we can avoid that, but we're still woefully over the 1.5 degrees Celsius that we need to avoid. Now let's get into land. So agriculture needs a lot of land. Well, by continent here, I'm going to point out the final column here, and this is degraded land area by continent. We can see that from Africa to Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, and South America, about 70% of all land has already been degraded. Much of that degrading is topsoil. We are losing topsoil at an unprecedented rate. And without topsoil, we're not going to be able to grow crops or grow crops very well. And we're on a pathway to ensuring that we are going to not only have an issue growing food, but growing food depending on where you're at. So some places are more degraded than others. This map here, because I want to focus in on the US, it's easy to compartmentalize places that are far away, though I will get back to some global things. But this shows us the Midwest here. In the Midwest, we mostly grow 3 crops. We grow some wheat in the northern parts, but then the majority is corn and soy. Corn and soy are incredibly pesticide and synthetic nutrient intensive. And in the top left-hand graph, we see soil and pesticide degradation. The darker the color, the worse it is. And then on the bottom right-hand graphic is the Mississippi Delta or the Mississippi watershed, that all streams flow into the Mississippi River, and all these nutrients, in addition to sediment, which is another way to say we're losing topsoil, that's not only losing our ability to grow food, but also it's poisoned soil because we're spraying our entire lands with so many chemicals that they're ending up washing in the Gulf of Mexico, where there's a dead zone where aquatic life cannot really live. And that dead zone is 8,000 square miles, or the size of New Jersey and the size of Connecticut combined. So not only is it our ability to grow food being compromised by climate change, but also we are degrading other ecosystems. So this graph gives us the contiguous United States. Now, this graph is a representation of proportion of land used for different things. So don't take it literally on location. But I want to point out here in the center, out of all the land in the United States, that has how much land that we currently give to cows. Now, that's not all. That's just pasture and rangeland. Cows are meant to eat grass. But through concentrated feeding animal operations, which I'll get to in a moment, we know that we grow, that Midwest graph that I just showed you before, with all the pesticide runoff creating the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, we also grow a ton of feed for export. There's another chunk of land for livestock feed. So if you add all that together, just think about how much land we give to livestock, and most of that is for the cow. Hence my title, The Western's World Unhealthy Obsession with the Cow. Now, you compare that to food that gets directly grown and fed to human beings, and you can see that we have a land use issue. So when the IPCC report comes out and says that we need to have natural solutions in conjunction with land use, this is what I look at as a food systems scholar. So these are just a few pictures of what we're talking about with a concentrated animal feeding operation, because we grow so much food for these. These are not farms, these are factories, even though they're still classified as farms, but this is what modern livestock operations look like. We produce a ton of meat, but it's at a cost of our soil and our water and our environment, as this graph will sum up here. So air, methane from concentrated animal feeding operations is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions from the system, and it traps up to 28 times more energy than carbon dioxide. It is the majority of US waterways in the United States are polluted from animal livestock operations. In other words, don't go swimming anywhere in the Midwest. The river's polluted. Human rights are a big issue with this operation. Communities get devalued land. They have to deal with noise and smell. So it's not just environment. There's a lot of impact on people. And it's also the most likely to transmit the next pandemic disease. But as far as the environment, we have a massive soil erosion and then waste. We have 94 million cows alone in the United States. And in the state of Iowa alone, they have so many animals that in a state with 3.2 million total people, if we were to equate the amount of waste that all the animals produce in that state alone, it would be the equivalent of 471 million people that we have to deal with sewage with in Iowa alone. So the cattle industry accounts for 14.5% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. So we address this system. We don't have to wait for Elon Musk to bring down the prices of Tesla. This is a choice we can all make. We don't have to wait for the politicians to get their act together to convert our coal and our gas and our oil energy systems. We can all make these choices now, though food access, as recognized in the introduction, is a big problem. So here's a couple pictures of what some of those, this system, and it's a system. So we have the warehouses there on the right, and then we have feedlots on the left. And you can tell from the size of these things that the land, it's not that we're giving all this land to them only, is that still removing the animals from this land, it will take years to repair and heal this land. So any notion of expanding this operation is essentially going to guarantee that that already 70% land and soil degradation continues. And I'll just point out on the picture on the right, that's a waste lagoon after a heavy rain. And so all that, the animal feces, urine, pus, blood, etc., it all eventually gets washed into our environment eventually, because they just put it in big pools and the next big flood comes around and it all gets mixed into our environment. So globally too, it's a concern. The Amazon rainforest is an enormous carbon sink and an area that draws down carbon from the atmosphere. It also pumps huge quantities of water into the atmosphere through a process called transpiration. So enough moisture rises out of the Amazon to supply these vast rivers, about half of which falls back down the region. Except in the Amazon, due to clearing of the forest for cattle, we have reached a tipping point. This is a very recent report coming out in the last 2 weeks. The Amazon rainforest is losing its stability due to the clearing of forest for cattle. So novel statistical analysis shows that more than 75% of the untouched forest has lost stability since the early 2000s, meaning it takes longer to recover after things like droughts and wildfires, which droughts and wildfires are two things expected to not only happen more frequently, and but also with greater intensity. We've reached many tipping points on a planetary scale, and I won't go over the rest of the slide, but I just wanted to point out the Amazon is this, we're essentially trading the largest rainforest in the world for cows. California, so this is not just all about Amazon, California is running out of water. You go to any of your grocery stores at any given time, depending on the product, up between 30 up to 90%, depending on the item of that item, that produce, that nut, that vegetable, that fruit comes from California, including over 90% of all almonds grown, or 99% of all almonds grown domestically are in California. And it's a huge industry in California where we grow a lot of our food. Now, I got a lot of this from the book, which is a great read, Perilous Bounty. But right now, this is pulled from May 29th, 2022. The California Central Valley, which I'll highlight right here, is in category D3, which is an extreme drought. California is literally running out of water because we're putting too much intensive agriculture into the water. In other words, folks, it's not the people in LA and San Francisco that are draining the water coffers. You know, population impacts it, but it is agriculture that's driving this. And so we have exceptional drought just to the neighbor in Las Vegas. And so these things are going to be a big problem, not just for people, but for our food production. And then I won't go over this slide, but and I can send this to anybody who requests it after our presentation. But there's another thing with called the Great Flood. And if you look up Arc Storm, you'll find that we are about anywhere from next year up until about 20 or 30 years away from what's called an atmospheric river that's going to deluge so much water in the Central Valley, it's going to essentially wipe out the fruit and vegetable basket of the United States with this flood. And part of that adaptation I mentioned earlier in the presentation points out that we're not prepared for it. Now, this is all the this is a graph of all the habitable land in the entire world, 71%. We already dedicate 50 of this percent to agriculture, because some of you might think, well, how do we feed the world? Well, currently we're doing it in probably the least efficient, most destructive way possible, because already 3/4 of all agricultural land is used to feed cows, pigs, and chicken, not humans. Now, oh, doesn't that supply a lot of calories? Well, actually it doesn't. Currently, with this disproportionate system, 82% of our calories still comes from plant-based food, and even protein doesn't have a monopoly, or animals don't have a monopoly on protein, because about 2/3 of our protein still comes from plant-based products. So we need to smarter agriculture. This is a very highly inefficient, destructive system. So global climate change and food production, I'll just highlight the bolded parts because I have about a minute and a half left, but food production is already 21% lower due to global heating. The production of rice, maize, and wheat alone could fall by 10 to 25% per degree of warming. And if you remember, we're already on trajectory for about 2 or 3 degrees. So we're going to lose up to 75% of any one of those crops. Our industrial food system is the major culprit, of which animal agriculture is an enormous part of. So the thing is that we already produce enough calories. The answer is not to increase food production. So reject the corporate technocratic solutions of we just need better varieties of these things. We just need more efficient, concentrated animal feeding operations. No, we need to dramatically reduce food waste. We need to increase food access, and we need to use only agroecological, regenerative, and/or at minimum organic principles. These principles must become the convention, not the alternative. In other words, we need the corner convenience store and the farmers markets to be in all neighborhoods, not just in affluent neighborhoods that have Whole Foods. So solutions to conclude is animal product consumption, both meat and dairy, needs to decrease by about 90%. There is still a role for animals to play, especially with soil health, as ungulates do turn up the soil. But food access is a major issue. We have 1 billion people hungry. We have a food literacy problem. People think food comes from the grocery store, not from the earth. And we need to buy products that protect soil, biodiversity, and forest. Agroecological production practices must become the convention and not the alternative. And I have final slide here. My timer went off. Conclusion. So while the IPCC recognizes a diverse food system that can include some animal production, including the role of ruminants play in soil health and biodiversity, the latest report makes clear that food systems shifting to sustainable diets that are lower in animal products will result in a 30 to 70% greenhouse gas reduction by 2050, while also improving human health and well-being. And finally, reductions of excess meat consumption is amongst the most effective measures to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, with a high potential for environment, health, food security, biodiversity, and animal welfare co-benefits. In other words, folks, this is the complete package. You change food systems, and we're going to avoid much of the issues of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alana. That was, we absolutely loved your passion and your knowledge that you shared with us today. I'm going to pass this microphone right over to Smita Malpani, our co-chair, my co-chair.
I'm just noticing that there was a comment from someone in the chat that was amazing, and I will second that comment. So thank you so much, Alana. That was definitely put a lot out there, I think, and I hope that everyone is thinking about what Alana said, so that we'll have a good question and answer session at the end as well. I wanted now to turn to our keynote speaker and introduce Amanda Sweetman. Amanda Sweetman is the Regional Director of Farming and Healthy Lifestyles for Trinity, Michigan. She was the farm manager for St. Joe's Ann Arbor hospital-based farm for 5 years before transitioning to the new regional role. She has a master's degree in wetland plant ecology and has worked as a scientist, a chef, an educator, and a farmer. And the title of her talk is Hospital-Based Farming, Investing in Nutrition Security Through Innovative Land Use. So.
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today with all of you. And Alana and Dr. Reed, you set up this talk perfectly. So I'm looking forward to talking to all the students and everybody on the call about what we do over at the farm at St. Joe's and how that really plays with the broader community challenges that we're facing. Let me make sure I can get my screen shared correctly here. Come on, computer. There we go. Can everybody see that? Yep, great. All right. So, like I said, really couldn't, oh wait, left the presentation. You're rude. There we go. Couldn't have done a better job of setting this up, having this talk be set up better, even if we'd planned it. So thank you again for all of that. So I care deeply about the work I do. The passion that Alana brought to her talk is hopefully something you'll see from me as well. Really being able to work in the intersection of climate change, food, health, agriculture. It's really when I got my degree in wetland plant ecology, I didn't really think I'd end up as a hospital-based farmer, but it prepared me in a really beautiful way. So for all of you who are studying biology, there's not a straight path to finding your passion and your space in life, but if you follow the things that really light you up, I think you'll end up someplace that turns out well for you. So for us today, I want to talk about the farm at St. Joe's, and I want to talk about this idea of hospital-based farming, but again, in that context of climate change, health disparities, and how if we can start to solve these challenges, if we can shift our diets, if we can change our individual behaviors, if we can be good advocates, vote with your dollars and your ballot, we can start to make a real meaningful difference on a lot of different fronts. So I want to make sure that we are grounded it with some language, because really language matters. So the start of my talk is going to really be about giving us some shared language, grounding us in those shared challenges, and then we get to move on to solutions and talk about how the farm at St. Joe's is one of those solutions. So we've gotten a really great background on agriculture and climate change. The things that I want to bring up are to bring it home. So if you are a farmer, or you have someone who is a farmer in your family, the floods of 2017, 2018, 2020, and 2021, you're starting to feel, climate change is real and now and today. Hopefully we don't have a lot of forest fires here in Michigan, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. Our soil health has also been deeply impacted through non-sustainable agricultural practices. But Alana did a great job talking about that more. So I really want to bring it and give some more detail to what Dr. Reed brought up. What are the disparities and why is that happening? And why is the health system involved, right? So one of the things that I'll bring up is health disparities are real. And it's not just, do you have access to a doctor? It's how long do you live? What is your vitality in those years that you get to live? So this is a map of life expectancy by census tract in our community. So this is Washtenaw County. You can see over here, we've got some nice dark green. The Burns Park area, you're expected to live 89 years on average. The census tract that actually touches the hospital, that red cross is the hospital. This census tract, you're expected to live for 67 years. And so the health system is really invested in trying to figure out what's behind that. How can we really make a difference? And for the purposes of this talk, and because it's a huge impact, we're going to talk about food. So food is actually the #1 cause of poor health in the United States. Poor diet is the cause of approximately 500,000 deaths per year. Diet-related illnesses are more prevalent in communities with higher levels of poverty and communities of color, right? So again, here's Ann Arbor, lots of dark green. We expect that community to have higher levels of affluence, higher levels of people who are white. Ypsilanti, you have a much more diverse population, higher rates of our BIPOC communities, and lower socioeconomic standards. So let's go to the next slide. So food is a big piece of this, right? So, and we've already heard from Dr. Reed, some of this is about access or food insecurity, not having regular access to healthy foods, food insecurity. And that those food insecurity is unevenly distributed as well. So here we have a map of Washtenaw County again. You can see that those yellow circles indicate the rates of food insecurity in our community. And it's not that Ann Arbor doesn't have higher rates of food insecurity, it's that Ann Arbor or the Ypsilanti area has higher rates. Something to call out that the pandemic has really impacted this, that we saw food insecurity increase by 36% in 2020. I know it's starting to taper, but it is still much higher than it was pre-pandemic. So let's also, oh goodness. All right, so again, food access, that idea of, do you have consistent access to fresh fruits and vegetables? Do you have a high quality grocery store in your community? Food access is really important. And we can see on this map, orange is that you have low income and low access. Green is slightly better, right? You have slightly greater access. But where do we have those low income, low access? Downtown Ypsilanti is the heart of both of those things. So what causes lack of access? It could be you not having access to a car or high quality public transportation. Oh goodness, I'm losing my earbuds this whole talk, I apologize. It can also be that you don't have a grocery store nearby. And Dr. Reed, I apologize. I'm gonna share some new and emerging research that actually puts this on its head a little bit. So let's first talk about the term a food desert, right? People have probably heard of food desert, this idea of you just don't have access, it's not close by. But this term isn't really preferred because it doesn't recognize the agency of individuals living in those communities, the creativity and ingenuity that they use to support themselves. And it can also sound like a naturally occurring phenomenon, right? Like deserts are a naturally occurring phenomenon. So the preferred term is actually food apartheid, because in contrast to a food desert, it highlights the political reality of food insecurity. Food and agriculture, right, land access, like Dr. Reed mentioned, was and still are deliberately not made available to specific communities. For example, our Black, Brown, and low-income and Indigenous communities. So while we're on the topic of community agency, I also want to highlight the food justice movement, which works to ensure universal access to nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food for all, while advocating for the well-being and safety of those involved in the food production process. So unfortunately, that meal gap, right? What's causing 1 in 500,000 people to die from poor diet. That meal gap, the emerging research is saying that only 10% of that meal gap is due to access, which, this is brand new research. It's coming out of several different sociologists. I would highly recommend looking up Dr. Priya Fielding-Singh's book. Her research on how the other half eats is very illuminating. So I wish we were all in person and we could popcorn and talk about this together. But since we're on Zoom, I'll keep going here. So the thing is, what else contributes to this, right? If only 10% of our dietary gap is based on access, what else is contributing? So that research by Dr. Fielding-Singh suggests that factors including cost, emotional nutrition. So if you're having to say no all the time because you're living in a state of poverty, right? No to your children, you can't go to summer camp. I'm sorry, we don't have a car. No to yourself, you can't buy those new shoes that would really make your workday feel less difficult and tiring because you just don't have the income, right? What can you say yes to? You can say yes to the 99-cent bag of chips or hot Takis, right? The other thing to call out is that $1.7 billion, and this is way back in 2009, so it's probably gone up. $1.7 billion is the amount of money that is spent advertising on food to kids. So you go to the store, what do your kids say? They want the sugar candy. They want the sugar sweetened beverages. And it's because a lot of our advertising is targeting kids. So how can you as a parent feel like you're being able to say yes, right? How do you feed your emotional nutrition? You say yes to your children. You say yes to yourself on something like food. Time budgets is another thing that can be really limiting. I know when I'm too busy or feeling time poor, I use more processed foods, right? I'll heat up that box of mac and cheese because I'm just too hungry to think of something else. Belonging, what you eat is also emotional and signals which groups you belong to. It's tied to your memories, it's tied to your family. So again, I would really highly recommend looking up that book because it does give you a lot more insight into that, what's contributing to the meal gap. So let's bring this back to climate and food access. So I love showing this map of climate change. So here, this is the heat index for Michigan. So here you can see in red that high emission scenario, which is, we're actually on track to exceed that high emission scenario that was cited for this paper. So you can see by 2080 to 2099, we're gonna feel like Oklahoma. I don't know about y'all. I don't wanna live in Oklahoma, and we can grow really different foods in Oklahoma. So something to call out for Michigan is we're actually the second most agriculturally diverse state in the union. So after California, we can grow the most types of food. So as Alana mentioned, California is starting to run out of water. When I go to the grocery store with my farmer eyes, I see that the quality of produce coming out of California is already diminished, that some of what's on our shelves already looks like seconds to me. They already look like things that we would not have sold previously, but it's what they're able to produce because of the droughts and the floods and the fires. So we want to make sure that Michigan can continue to be our kind of backup breadbasket, right? And when I think about land use, land access, land policies, we should be saying, hey, we should be saving those acres of land to grow food here in Michigan. We're going to be a climate refuge. We shouldn't be putting up houses here. We should be putting up farms. And part of the reason for that, right? So as agriculture and biodiversity and climate change make growing food more difficult, the price of staple foods could double by 2030. That is soon, right? And we're already starting to see those impacts. We're already experiencing the supply chain disruptions, but they will only continue to get worse. We will have biodiversity disruptions that, you know, what percentage of our food is dependent on pollinators? It's something like 2 out of every 3 bites is dependent on a pollinator. And so if we continue to see decreases in our native pollinators like birds and bats and bees, including, and, you know, other types of pollinators like honeybees, if we continue to have those disruptions, food will become more and more expensive and harder to get. We're also going to see things like flooding and greenhouse gas emissions just continue to go up. So we've talked about the problems, right? We know we have a climate problem. We know that agriculture contributes to those problems in a lot of different ways. We know we have a hunger problem. We know we have an obesity problem, right? I didn't even touch on that, but so many of our community members, particularly communities of color, are impacted by poor health outcomes that come from poor food access, right? Unfortunately, you can be obese and malnourished. So let's then talk about the solutions. So one of the solutions is carbon farming. So one of the ways that you farm for carbon is that you start changing how you're growing food and what kinds of food you're growing and what you're putting on that land outside of your crop production. So one of the ways is cover crops. So it's estimated that 20 million acres of cover crops can sequester over 66 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to about 13 million vehicles. So 20 million acres might sound like a lot, but it's actually very doable, especially when you think about after you've had a crop on a field, you can plant a cover crop, and that's then holding that soil over the winter. So we see crop yields increase because our soils are healthier. We see that biodiversity can go up in areas where we use cover crops because we have habitat. We have habitat for our pollinators. We have habitat that's keeping people healthy. And it can really reduce erosion. So to bring it back to the Great Lakes Basin, what you'll see this time of year in Ohio is we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of snow melting off, and all that topsoil is getting picked up in those waters. And because we do not have wetlands to catch all those nutrients and all that topsoil before it runs off into our lakes and rivers, we get a lot of sediment and nutrients going out into Lake Erie, which causes our algal blooms, right? So the good news is a lot of our solutions hit at not just one solution, but many solutions, right? We could reduce toxic algal blooms if we put in place some of these carbon farming practices like cover crops. So another solution is changing your diet and reducing waste. So if you are really passionate about climate change, one of the best resources I can send you to is Project Drawdown. They've done a massive meta-analysis of the research out that's available about what would it take to not only stop emitting carbon, but actually drawing greenhouse gases, including carbon, out of our atmosphere, which is frankly what we need to be doing. So that's what they mean. They're drawing down carbon in our atmosphere. So these are their top 6 solutions. The last time I pulled it, which was just about 2 weeks ago. And you can see number 3 and number 4, reduce food waste, right? Food waste creates a huge amount of methane. And we could be wasting so much less, right? Just like Alana said, we don't need to be growing more calories. We need to be wasting less. We need to be smarter about what we're growing. And shifting to that plant-rich diet. I could talk to you until I was blue in the face about the benefits of a plant-based diet, including reductions in how much water is used, the land mass that's used to grow that food. But Alana did a lot of that for us. And again, why we use this as a health system is, right, it's so much better for you. So another solution is protecting ecosystems. Let's not keep cutting down forests to make pasture land for cows. Let's protect the wetlands that we have. Let's put wetlands back so that we can keep those nutrients on the land and out of the water. Let's keep our grasslands healthy. Prairies are one of the most productive ecosystems that we have. They support not only, the giraffes of Africa, but also the bison of the United States. And so many of our insects rely on those ecosystems. So let's talk about the farm. So solutions, hospital-based farms, question mark. Let's bring these things all together, right? So why would a hospital like St. Joe's get involved? They care deeply about being a transforming, healing presence in the community, right? They know that, again, that vitality, how healthy are you and how long do you live? The health system is held accountable to those things. This is actually part of the Affordable Care Act, that now we are held accountable to the long-term health outcomes of our communities, but only 20% of you as an individual, your health outcomes are due to the healthcare you receive. That leaves 80% of other things. So that's those social influencers of health. So how some of that is your individual behaviors, about 30 to 40% are your behaviors. What are you choosing to eat? Are you engaging in risky behaviors like smoking, excessive alcohol, or other risky behaviors? But a lot of that, so that's, let's see, that's 60%. That remaining 40% is those social influencers. Is the climate around you supportive of a healthy environment? Do you have access to transportation? Do you have access to healthy food? Do you have education to know how to use that healthy food? All those good things. So the hospital decided, hey, we're going to get involved, and we have this really unique resource of this massive campus. So we're going to start the farm at St. Joe's. Our mission is to grow a healthy community by empowering people through food, education, and relationships. Really thinking about it as just a coming alongside. We don't want to say what your end goal is, who you're on that path with, but we want to provide you the tools, and we want to provide you a space where you can go from you should eat healthier, right? Which is essentially fear-based, to you can be healthier. You can come and learn how to garden. You can come and learn how to cook kale salad that doesn't make you chew for 10 minutes. There's lots of different things that you can do to feel healthier. And these are the things that we're trying to do. So like I mentioned, there's lots of things that hospitals can do. But one of the things that's why the St. Joe's, which is just across the street from EMU, decided to use a farm was we have this amazing resource. We have one of the largest healthcare campuses in the country, 365 acres. This diagram shows kind of how that land is split up. So you can see we've got the hospital in the middle. Our parking lots also collect water, right? So we need to be cognizant of where water is getting collected on campus. Yellow are areas where we either currently have hay or we're planning on having hay. So trying to take out as much of our campus from just grass that we have to mow every week to putting it into an agricultural product. On the lower right, you see the orange is the farm at St. Joe's. And then we actually have miles of nature trails in the green. There's 2.5 miles that I've managed to log on my phone when I go and walk around. And we have a prairie that's got threatened and endangered species in it. So if you want to come and see something cool, come and check out the farm. So I mentioned that that language matters. So we talked about food apartheid, food deserts, food justice. Let's really focus in on what the farm focuses on. So we focus on nutrition security, that a person has consistent access, availability, and affordability of foods and beverages that promote well-being and prevent, and if needed, treat, right? I love this addition to this definition, disease. We also focus on sustainable food systems. So a food system that delivers food security and nutrition for all in a way that the economic, social, and environmental bases to generate food security and nutrition for future generations are not compromised. So how do we do that? About 80% of the food grown at the farm at St. Joe's is donated to patients and providers in our communities. So this is our beautiful participations program. We do this because we know that it's important to have food access everywhere. We want to make the healthy choice the easy choice. So you can see Dr. Berman on the left-hand side. She comes and picks up food from us every week. She takes it to the clinic on the lower right-hand side. Patients now schedule their clinic visits for Veggie Wednesdays, right? This is the Academic Internal Medicine Clinic. These are folks who have higher needs, right? It's one of our social safety net clinics. We added colleagues in 2020 because it's hard to be a healthcare worker right now. It's been challenging in the pandemic. Bringing in life-giving food like food from the farm really makes a difference. Our flagship program is our collaborative farm share. So if you've heard of a CSA, community supported agriculture, we call ours a farm share because it means more than the acronym. Essentially, it's a veggie subscription service. So we work with 14 local farms to bring food in. We generate a lot of revenue for those farms, right? In 2021, we generated $180,000 for local farms. We packed over 8,000 boxes of food and distributed those out to our members. People who can afford to pay can pay. We love that because it supports our programs. A lot of people who can't afford to pay and are experiencing food insecurity receive the program for free or some kind of subsidy. So last year, 118 food insecure families received free membership from us. This program has really been meaningful over the large time scale. So we started in 2015. We have served over 800 families experiencing food insecurity, and we've generated well over $600,000 for local farms. One of the things that I'll just bring this back to climate, food, and equity is that we're investing in those local farmers, right? And they are more able to be good stewards of our land. So we're investing in the local ecology by doing this. We're investing in the local economy as well. So making sure those dollars stay local means that those dollars are more likely to go to your neighbor and come back to you. These are just a few of the farms that we work with, including We the People Opportunity Farm. We love working with Farmer Melvin. So one of the things I want to call out as you think about your future career and what you can be doing is that one of the things we work really hard to do is identify community need, right? We're trying really hard not to bake a cake and serve it. We're trying to respond to what people are asking for and do that as well as we can. So you can see the big growth of our program here, the Farm Share, shows, I think, that we are doing a good job of meeting an unaddressed need in our community. I just had to put up a picture of our new building. So I hope all of you can come out and visit us. We just put up a food hub so we can continue to do more food aggregation. So how are we impacting obesity health disparities, right? So that the Farm Share Assistance Program for families experiencing food insecurity really does make a difference. 80% of our participants increase their fruit and vegetables, intake of fruit and vegetables. And as a result of the program, for kids, 100% of them ate more fruits and vegetables. They tried new fruits and vegetables. And according to this survey, 86% of them requested fruits or vegetables to be included in a snack or meal. One of the things I think is awesome about this program is that kids get really involved. We bring them to the farm. We offer free summer camp. We're doing that education so that when you're in a grocery store, you know to pick up that bunch of Hakurei turnips, which is what they're working on this cutting board, as opposed to going for the bag of chips, right? So it starts to address that meal gap. So the farm at St. Joe's isn't just about food assistance. We also offer a lot of educational opportunities, including internships, youth education, summer camps, and we offer one-off classes as well. Like I mentioned, I just had to throw up some pictures. You guys are all so close to the St. Joe's campus. Come out and use the farm. One part of addressing the obesity epidemic is addressing food. Another part is making it safer and more accessible to get outside and exercise. The farm at St. Joe's and our broader campus is a great place to come out and do that. We also know that diverse systems are more resilient systems. And so underpinning everything we do is building strong community relationships. So we have a staff community garden where nurses, doctors, administrators can come in and rent plots. We welcome a lot of volunteers. So if you're interested in coming out as a class or as an individual, we encourage you to do that. We have a handicap accessible hoop house where people can come and do therapy if they've experienced a brain injury or other long-term injuries. And I want to come back to the solutions. I want to empower you to know what you can do, because I hate going to climate talks where it's just like doom and gloom. So there's large-scale solutions. Get politically active. Your voice matters. Your voice and your dollars really, truly do make a difference. Support candidates. Call them up on the phone. Your elected officials, people running for office. Let them know that you support social programs like SNAP, like affordable housing, and tell them about your views on energy policy and agricultural policy. Government subsidies really do dictate a lot of what food we have available. Right now, they are not set up to support sustainable farming, and that needs to change. Your individual changes make a difference too. Shift your diet. It doesn't have to be completely away from animal products, but make it more plant forward. Lower your food print. Think about where your food comes from and the miles that they have to travel. use your own packaging, and commitment to anti-racism, right? We all need to be thinking about how our systems support or currently don't support a fair and equitable outcome for all. So get involved. You can volunteer. You can have an intern. You can come and be an intern. You can join our farm share. Follow us on social media. So that's all for us. Thank you again for having me today.
Smita, did you want to go ahead? Just to thank our speaker.
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Emily. I thought you might want to introduce the next speakers, but thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate you were right in what you said in the beginning of the talk. I think Alana set up a lot of the problems and you gave us a lot of really great solutions to think about. So thank you for that. And again, as you're thinking about Amanda's presentation, remember to think of some good questions for her for the end of our session.
And I'm happy to introduce the students next, if that's okay. Okay. Next, we have students Julia Taylor and Betania Miranda Cornejo describing the WCC Student Food Forest. I'm going to introduce both speakers. They're going to speak together. Julia Taylor is a WCC student and nursing major. She is the immediate past president of the Students for Sustainability Club, where, due to the pandemic, believe it or not, she had to teach club members how to plant and water on Zoom. Betania Miranda Cornejo is a WCC student and environmental sciences major. They are the current vice president of the Students for Sustainability Club and are organizing composting in the food forest this year. So take it away, Julia and Betania.
When in doubt and upside down, I turn to the trees, for they will always help me turn back around. My name is Betania, and today, along with Julia, we will talk about the food forest at WCC and its role as a local solution to the climate crisis. Thank you for the introductions, by the way. How many of you guys, I would love to ask a question, but I can probably guess that a lot of people don't really know about the food forest. I tend to ask classmates and professors, and they're like, oh, I had no idea we had that. But we do. It's located right by the LA building near the parking lot 6, just so you know, for future reference. But Julia, do you want to tell us what is a food forest?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks again for the introduction, Emily. That was awesome. Okay, so what is a food forest exactly? So a food forest is a type of sustainable agriculture that mimics natural forest ecosystems. A food forest is more sustainable than regular farming agriculture because it has 7 different layers in a food forest versus 2 to 3 layers that you would see in regular agriculture. Food forests are self-sustaining, and food forests also provide natural mulch, protect against heat and cold, and also build healthy soil, which is clearly what we need to be doing a lot more of right now. And I want to explain a little bit about the history of particularly Washtenaw Community College's food forest. So the history of our food forest, we wanted to dedicate the food forest to the apple orchard that once ran what was Washtenaw Community College today. Before Washtenaw Community College became what it was today, it used to be a beautiful and large apple orchard loved by many in the county. Okay. Alongside many other vegetables and fruits that were grown there, the beauty of what is used to really be what was the apple orchard. Washtenaw Community College has kindly kept one of the trees in remembrance of the Huron farms, but Students for Sustainability decided that there needed to be a few more. We are so grateful to be able to honor and remember the past of what was before Washtenaw Community College became the college that it is. And we hope that the legacy of the apple orchard can live on forever through Washtenaw Community College. So that's our history. And then we're gonna get into the structure of our food forest in particular. So there's 7 different layers, like I was explaining. There's the canopy, subcanopy, vertical layer, shrub, herbaceous, ground cover, and root. So the first layer is the canopy, and the canopy is the tall tree layer. This is the highest layer of all 7 layers. It consists of nut trees, nitrogen fixing trees, and fruit trees. The second layer is the subcanopy layer. This layer is also populated by fruit trees. The third layer is the vertical or the climbing layer. This is some of the more expansive layers. Climbing plants include plants like hops, grapes, and kiwi. Fourth is the shrub layer. This is the third lowest layer, and it is of course mainly populated by shrubs that include black currant, buckthorn, goji berry, alongside many other berries. The fifth layer is the herbaceous layer. This layer is made up of lower growing plants that create a living mulch, which protects the soil. The sixth layer is going to be the ground cover layer. The ground cover layer functions alongside many of the other plants and the other layers, as well as borage, mint, strawberries, and valerian root. And then the seventh layer is the underground layer. So this is exactly as it sounds like. It populates the area underneath the soil. This layer includes onion, garlic, sweet potato. It also contains fungi, which support the health of the ecosystem. Okay, so what can you find in the food forest? This is everything that we just spoke about above. So again, 7 different layers, mainly consisting of berries, nuts, fruits, herbs, all that good stuff. So the WCC food forest in particular has many incredible different species of plants, and I would love to explain what we have in there right now and what we are looking forward to adding in the spring. So the past year we decided to plant collards, sage, false blue indigo, which is a flower. It's a pollinator friendly plant, tomato, currants, apple trees, borage, and garlic. And then this year we plan to have more perennials, asparagus, oregano, currants, more garlic, and sage. We're big advocates for pollinator friendly plants, as well as plants that help with the soil and the mulch. So, yeah. All right, Betania, you want to take it away?
Yep, you can go to the next slide.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, so the food forest was built on 3 core purposes, 2 of them being to reduce hunger and increase resiliency of the food systems on campus and surrounding community by providing fruits, herbs, and vegetables, as well as spreading knowledge on food sovereignty. By doing so, building community and encouraging sustainable practices that could be done from home. These efforts have become increasingly challenging since 2020 due to the pandemic and the restrictions preventing some students to come to the campus and care for the food forest. We hope that as the world recovers, so does our environment and the growing community at WCC. The food forest is a local solution to the climate crisis because of its role in restoring local ecosystems. WCC, as previously mentioned, was placed on an apple orchid, which is what inspired the students to build the food forest in 2018. And by removing invasive species and planting native species in the previously described 7-layer plan, the students at WCC are actively working for our campus that respects and honors the environment, and by doing so, guiding the institution towards sustainable solutions for the climate crisis. The food forest provides food, habitat for wildlife, traps carbon from the atmosphere, builds and protects soil, mitigates erosions, manages rainwater, and preserves biodiversity. And these are all processes known to help ecosystem services and reduce the effects of climate change. Now, the climate change crisis is scary and an overwhelming time to live in and to be young in, but it does not have to be this way. I don't think it has to be this way. The solutions exist, and even though us individuals can't solve the majority of the rig system behind it, we can work within our communities and just give it our best. As we all know, there's a lot of people in the world, and what might seem like a small difference could be actually very impactful. Some ways you can become a part of the solutions for the climate crisis is reducing your consumption of animal products, as discussed throughout this presentations past. And I just want to mention that there are organizations willing to help you with these transitions, like Beg Michigan, that I put the link in the screen. They will give you a 30-day grocery bag if you sign their pledge to just try plant-based diets on their website that I've attached in there. And also within your own community, you can join Students for Sustainability Club through the Campus Connect QR code that I also left on the screen. And with us, you can help manage and grow the food forest and learn from faculty and students that are more than willing to guide you into more conscious diet, as well as other sustainable solutions like composting, reducing waste, eating local, gardening, among others. And then I also want to mention that there are local activist organizations in the city of Ann Arbor with performance art activism, like the People's Planet with the Ann Arbor Planet Parade and Action Network that happens the first Sunday of every month in Carytown. And as well as locals organizing with global efforts such as Save Soil that also organize other parades and events. You can find more about both of these organizations by following the links on the screen. And feel free to message me with any questions about the resources I just presented or the food forest if you want to join.
Julia, I think you need to unmute.
I always do that. Okay, so we just wanted to say thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for having us. We hope this inspires you to take action in the local community. Help us in the food forest, join the Students for Sustainability Club if you're a student at WCC, and get involved in creating local solutions to the climate crisis. We also look forward to seeing you all enjoying nature with us at the food forest soon.
Thank you so much, Julia and Petania. We really appreciate that you gave up your free time to come talk to us and tell us about the club and so on. I'm just going to read some of the pie that people wanted to talk about from the beginning when I asked you to put your favorite dessert into the chat. And we have, I can't read them all, but we have a lot of cheesecakes, cherry pie, banana pudding, gulab jamun, ice cream, pumpkin bread, brownies, lemon meringue, many kinds of pie, blueberry, pumpkin, apple cheesecake, more brownies, cornbread, German chocolate cake, apricot honey cake, lemon squares, chocolate chip cookies, lots of apple and pumpkin pie, baklava, if I'm saying that right, cannolis, and so on. So thank you for putting those in the chat. Excuse me. And at this time, I'd like to thank our students again so much and our participants for giving our fabulous speeches. So let's give everyone a round of applause for fabulous speeches. And I'd like to reintroduce my co-chair, Smita Malpani, who will be covering question and answer session.
Thanks, Emily. So we've had a chance to hear a number of speakers and a number of perspectives on food, the good, bad, and in between, and the ugly. There's some certainly challenges and some lots of hopeful solutions. So I wanted to invite everyone, if you have any questions for our speakers, to put them in the chat. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions, and then I was hoping we could do a little fun exercise at the end that would involve all of us sort of brainstorming a little bit. So yeah, are there any questions for our speakers? I
have a question, Smita.
Yes, please.
This one applies to our first speaker, that was Elena. And she mentions food waste, and I'm sure we have plenty of it in America. And I'm wondering if a majority of that food waste comes from restaurants, and how, and if it does, how does that compare to other countries? Are we behind other countries? Are we ahead of other countries? Or can we do a better job?
Great, thank you for that question. And food waste along with water are two things that I wasn't able to touch upon in 15 minutes, but are huge problems within the food systems in relation to climate change. I know that depending on what type of waste you're talking about, the global average is around, there are some studies that range, but the low end is about 25% and the high end is about 40%, with an average falling about 30 to 33% of all food produced that's wasted. Now, the thing about that is that the domestic problem, meaning food in restaurants or food in your households, is a significant portion of it, but it is not the majority of it. A majority of that food waste, especially if we're talking about global commodities, is going to come in the form of food that's produced, it's perfectly edible, or it's ready to be turned into something, and it just like sits in warehouses or it sits in the field and it never reaches market. And this in a global aspect is really impactful because a lot of developing countries, part of that adaptation strategy is they don't have the funds, the government, or the infrastructure to invest in things like modern supply networks, warehouses, refrigerant, etc. So a lot of that food waste is there. Now, as far as the United States in post-consumer waste, which is I think what you were referring to in relation to like food that you throw away out of your fridge or at a restaurant. So once us, the consumers, bought it, it is also significant, but it varies greatly. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it is true that you're more likely to throw something away from a restaurant often because you don't have a means to refrigerate it or carry it than you are from home. And the United States is an absolute unfortunate, exceptional leader in the amount of waste food we throw away post-consumer. But just keep in mind though, I will remind you again that even in the United States at the industry level, a lot of food and produce just lays in the field or rots in the warehouse and it never makes it to market. So the problem is the system first, and then we can address the individual or we can do it in tandem. But just addressing individual food waste is not going to reach the scale that we need to address the amount of energy, water, soil, and labor put into producing food.
Mhm. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alana. We have another question in the chat, and we have also several comments in the chat of Julia and Betania about how awesome the food forest is. And I think a lot of students are interested in joining, which I think is fantastic. We have a question from Shanae Young, and this is a question about WCC, which is, did someone say that there were classes, or it might even be actually about the farm at St. Joe's. Did someone say that there are classes to teach you how to grow your own crops? I'm not sure if that's something that we are, I don't know that we offer that at WCC or have offered that at WCC, but I also wonder if that is something that Amanda might be able to talk about in terms of the farm at St. Joe.
Yeah, we offer some classes. The organization in town who does like teaching how to garden the best is Growing Hope. Growing Hope has their home gardening program. And so if you need some help affording getting your garden set up, they will actually help you do that. I think they're taking applications for that right now. They do a lot of good garden resource classes. The way we teach at the farm right now is typically by encouraging you to come and volunteer. Because the best way we know to teach you is to do it hands-on. So that's what we have right now. We are building our class list or our like curriculum. So if this is something that people are really interested in, let us know and we have the ability to offer it.
Awesome, thank you. And I have another question for you, Amanda, from James, who asks, with regard to accessibility and affordability for people interested in the veggie subscription or the sort of this farm share that you talked about, are there payment plans or options for people who may not be able to subscribe or afford them?
Yes. So this year, if you are someone who's experiencing food insecurity, we are offering it for free. In years past, we've had a sliding scale. And we'll probably go back to that, but it takes a lot of effort to run a sliding scale program, right? Like if you're thinking about starting programs like this, it's important to think about what your limitations as a program are also, right? So this year for us, it made the most sense to give the shares out for free. You can apply. I'll put the link in the chat for where to apply. Our membership list is currently full, but we always have a waiting list, and we do move through that waiting list relatively quickly. There are a couple other resources in town that I'll talk about. If you have food assistance or SNAP, Argus Farm Staff offers a box that you can buy. I think you sign up and you're essentially a member, and you can get a $30 box for $3.25. I know that the Ypsi area online market will be offering that as well, but they don't start until July.
Thank you. Thank you. There's another question from Nicole, and I think this could be for anyone of the speakers or even other faculty. I'm an instructor here. This is from Nicole. I'm an instructor here at WCC, and I'm going back to school for an MSc in climate change, agriculture, and food security. Seems pretty pertinent to what we're talking about here. I wonder if any of the speakers feel there is a most important or most impactful area of focus under this umbrella. It's a good question.
Are you unmuted, Amanda? Did you want to start?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see the question. The most impactful area, I would approach that a couple different ways. One, pick the thing that you love the most, right? You do your work every day, all day, right? Especially if it's something you really care about. Like, it's not a 9-to-5 kind of job. So I would say pick the thing that lights you up. There's a beautiful quote that says, and I'm going to get terribly wrong, but essentially, we don't need you to do, we as like broader community don't need you to do what the community needs. We need you to do what lights you up, because we need more light in our community. So if you do something that you really truly appreciate and enjoy, that would be my first step. And then if you're looking, you're like, I'm just really passionate about all of it, I would say how I think about it is, where's the biggest lever? So I've thought personally, I was like, is working in healthcare really where I want to be? Like, climate change, like if we don't solve climate change, none of this other stuff is going to matter. And I think about it and I was like, well, I'm in a position of leadership here. I have a really big lever to pull for change, because I know a lot of people here, and it's not just farming, right? It's not just having a garden. It's getting to talk to all of you and encourage you to become political advocates. It's encouraging you to make personal changes. So I think that would be where I would guide you.
Alana, did you also want to respond to the question?
Yeah, I think Amanda started off great. One of my teaching philosophies I tell my students is what's important to you is important. Like, there's not a hierarchy of categories here. And I like how, what lights you up is what we need in our communities, more light. And so what's important to any one of you is what is important. There's no one single, what the saying goes, silver bullet that's going to solve food systems. I mean, I hammered away at animal agriculture, and I think it is the elephant in the room, but there are many other things. Just for example, I'll pick on a vegetable crop right now, the almond craze, moving away from dairy milk, which has improved health and soil and everything, but now there are almond trees in California, and trees need year-round water to stay alive. And now we have an issue where all the almonds in California are taking up as much water as beef cattle. And so, it could be something like water management, where water management and efficient irrigation and growing the right crops in the right places and growing the right variety of crops that tap deeper down to the roots. There are so many ways that you can approach a broad topic and find your focus within it, but also address the wider systemic issues that are at play here. So improving, for example, the water system of one crop, that technology is likely adaptable to all other systems, for example. So it's not about being siloed. Our food systems, that's why me being interdisciplinary, like our food systems is exactly that. It's a system of so many areas, and it needs so many different areas of expertise and innovation and community advocacy to be addressed.
Thanks for that, Alana. I'm seeing that there are a number of other questions, really good questions in the chat. Emily had one, which I want to just ask right now, which is, will slides from the speakers be available to share with participants in today's summit? I'm seeing yes from
I'm
Alana.
happy to share mine. I would like I'd like to maybe send it tomorrow. I didn't link a couple citations. I really, but other than that, I'm happy to send it off to the Emily Thompson or who or USME to coordinate mass distribution. I don't mind that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think our students would really benefit. I think there was so much information packed into those slides that I think they would really benefit from being able to review them again. And as Emily said also in the chat, and I think Katie did as well, the recording will be available to all participants. So we'll email it out to you when it's ready. I know we have 2 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you all to do one last thing before we go and say goodbye. And that is to please type one word. It can just be one word in the chat about what we need for climate and food justice. What's one thing that we need for climate and food justice? We are going to take all of these responses and package them together and give them back to you when we send out our recording for the summit. So dream big. And I'm seeing here change, movement, equity, community, helping hands, awareness, intelligence, equality, determination, advocacy, sustainability. I hope sharing, compassion, education. I hope all of you take all of these different sentiments and ideas with you as you move forward from this summit. I want to thank all of you for attending. Our speakers today were phenomenal, and clearly we did not have enough time today to talk over everything that we wanted to, but I hope that these conversations will continue. Emily Thompson, as always, our fearless leader. Do you have any last words for us?
Well, I'm a co-leader, Smita, and it's been my pleasure to work alongside you for the last 4 years organizing these, along with many other people in the community who make this possible. And we had our thank you slides at the beginning. We're so glad all of you were here. We had marvelous speakers. We loved including our student speakers in the main room this year. And so thank you all for coming. Back to you, Smita.
That's all I got. Thank you so very much. Hopefully you'll all have some good conversations. Emily and I, feel free to reach out to us by email if you have any questions or want any more information. And we hope to see you at the next climate summit. And we hope you get into good trouble in the meantime.
Great. And Smita, may I just add, just because a couple of the questions for me that we weren't able to get to, when you send out the slides, I'm happy for them to email me and I can continue that conversation with a couple of those questions post summit. So
that's so gracious of you. Thank you, Alana. So yeah, and then would it be all right for me to share your email?
Yes, go for it. So you can share my email, and yeah, there was a couple of really good questions that I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Can we stop the recording now, please?